Rolling, rolling, rolling in the mouthpiece, rolling, 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 rolling with no Adderall. You know, I'm fucking mentally fucked up, so. Welcome to the Mouthpiece, Part 1, Episode 3. Today we're going to talk about, my WPT final tables, if I can remember them all. And then we're going to talk about, all kinds of bullshit. Then we're going to bring on Mike Sexton, former WPT announcer and current ambassador of Party Poker, here on the Mouthpiece. All right, welcome to the Mouthpiece, and today we're gonna talk about my WPT runs that I had, since we're gonna have a special guest, the guy who was the voice of the WPT for 15 years, Mr. Mike Sexton. So we might as well just talk about my WPT runs. So my first real run was in 2003. They don't even have me up as a cash. I don't know why. But it was a WPT. I actually finished 9th. It was the first tournament that Gus Hansen won. I'll never forget it. He got it all in against Lee Salem on a ace-8 deuce board, and Lee Salem had 3 8s, and it came ace and a king, and Gus Hansen eliminated Lee Salem, and that was like the second WPT we ever had, and I got 9th in that event. I really never had traction or many chips. I forgot how I went broke. I wanted to look it up, but they don't even have me as the cash for that, so it's kind of disappointing. But my next deep run was the WPT Championship in 03-04. That was really interesting. Once the World Poker Tour Championship 25,000 buy-in was announced, it basically became a tournament probably bigger to win than the World Series of Poker, because the WPT was the new thing. It was televised. This was the top tournament of the World Poker Tour, and if you won the WPT Championship, you were considered the best in the world. So I went from in 01 final tabling the World Series to most of my focus was winning the WPT Championship. So I remember going into day 4 or 5. I'm not quite sure if it was a 5-day event or a 4-day event. I'm pretty sure it was a 5-day event, but I had started the day with 18 people to go. It was day 4, so the final table was day 5. Started with 18 people to go with 2.3 million in chips, and the second place person had 1 million in chips, and everybody else had about 500,000-600,000, and I was the best player. I was dominating, and in my mind, there was just no way I wasn't going to win this tournament. And I look back at these certain hands that happen, and this is why I always tell myself I'd never go broke with jacks or ace queen again. But in this tournament, it just happened to be a couple hands with jacks, so I raised it up to about, I don't know, 40 or 60,000, Guy in the small blind shoves for 250, and then I call, and he has fives. He hits a 5, and I lose about 250, 300,000. I'm not quite sure exactly. I was actually looking for the write-up, but they don't even have it. But I remember that, and so now I had about 1.7, 1.6. Still, the next closest player had 1 million, so really wasn't really stressing that much. So now I am in a late position again, about a level or two later, where I raised it to about 80,000, and the same guy in the small blind moved all in, and he did it pretty quick, and I called him again with jacks, and again he had 5s, and again he hit a 5, and I was just sitting there in complete and utter disbelief. I've found a way to be brought back to the pack, and I maneuvered, I wiggled, and I got myself up to about 1.6 million, which was now about average chips. Lee Salem raised it, and the way he raised it, I just felt like he had ace king, and I had jacks again. So I decided to just flat. I wanted to play stop and go with him. I didn't want to give him 5 cards. The flop came down 9, 9, 10, and he moved all in for 800,000. And I just knew he had ace king, and I called, and he turned over ace king. And it comes ace on the turn, and now I'm back down to 800,000. And everybody is pretty much moved in front of me. So I start the day 2-1 in chips. I could pretty much dominate the table. I was able to open, 70, 80% of the pots. You got to remember, this is 03 and 04, where people, when you got the chips, nobody played back at you. So I was able to pretty much dominate. I turned the 800 back to about 1.2 million, which was about an average stack. And then I started playing really, really tight. Maybe I got to about 1.4, and then I played super duper tight, blinded myself down to about 1.1. I raised Martin Dickniff, who won the tournament. He re-raised me. I felt like he had ace queen or ace king, but my image was so tight now, I thought I could move him off of that. Now, remember, back then, when people 4-bet, it was like aces or kings 90% of the time. So it sounds crazy now. What are you going to move a guy off ace king? But at the time, you have to understand the situation. So my image was good. I decided to 4-bet jam, and he tanked for like 2.5 minutes, and he called me with ace king. I had ace 10, and that's how I went broke 15th in the WPT championship. That was pretty depressing. I don't mind my move with the ace 10. I just felt he didn't have aces or kings, and once again, back then, if nobody 4-bet unless it was aces or kings. I mean, they just didn't do it. And I hadn't played a hand in about 4 orbits, so I thought I could move him off what I thought was ace king, and it was ace king, and I was wrong. He called me, and I went broke. But it was a pretty disappointing tournament for me because I always wanted to win the WPT championship, and I haven't played it now, and I played it once in the last 6 years, and now I think they've made it. If you haven't won in one of the WPT events, you can't even play it. So whatever, it's not that important, but back then it was pretty important to me. Then we talk about my 04-05 trip to Aruba. This was a really interesting tournament because I end up getting third. Me and Lane Flack had all the chips, but because of the TV schedule, I think the levels at the final tables went up every 30 minutes. So it became kind of a all-in crapshoot type of thing late in the tournament. But me and Lane were like for sure going to finish 1 and 2, it looked like. And we were probably going to chop it and play for like 20,000 or something. It was like $1 million for first. Lane had just gotten doubled up by a guy with Humberto Brenes' nephew, if I'm not mistaken. The guy had 2 deuces. Lane had ace-3 suited. The deuces held up, and the guy doubled. But me and Lane still had all the chips. I opened a bunch of pots, and they moved in on me, and my chips were kind of dwindling. But Lane still had a pretty good chip lead. And then came the hand where I limped with Queen 9 offsuit, and the big blind checked. Now, I also want to give you a little background check of this tournament. I was kind of playing this tournament for my life. Now, you've heard the story of the 04 main event where Raymer knocked me out. What crippled me when I made the huge call with the 7-9 of spades after calling a huge re-raise, telling me I know he has ace-jack, and he did have ace-jack when the flop came 10-9 deuce, and I called, but he had diamonds, he had a diamond, crippled me, and then I kept alive, and I got it all in ace-king versus ace-queen. The guy had a queen on the river, and I finished like 83rd or 84th of the main event. And as you've seen on TV, I was crying because I knew in 3 months I was going to jail for something I didn't do. So it was very disappointing to me. Now, fast forward to this WPT Aruba tournament, I was going to jail in 2 weeks. So I was playing this tournament for my life after playing the World Series for my life. And I really needed to win to go. If I was going to go to jail, I was going to go with $1 million in my pocket. It had been a lot easier due to the 6 months. So I limp, Queen 9, big blind checks. Flop came Queen 8-5. I let out small. The guy in the big blind moved to all in. I studied for a while, and I said, I know I got you. And I called. He had 8-6 offsuit. Came 3 on the turn, 6 on the river, and I go out third. If I win that hand, me and Lane are dead even in chips head up. And who knows, everything in my life probably would have been different because, I've told this story of this tournament many a times where I got $250,000 and Howard asked me to give him the money and he'll give me 1% of full tilt. Now, they were selling 1% of full tilt at the time for $400,000. But he told me to keep 50 for bills and give him 200 because I was a big name, I guess, and good for the company. And he'll give me 1%. We'll get into that story of how I didn't give him the 200. I took the money, I put it in a sports betting account so I could bet while I was in jail. Lost it, and that cost me about $4 million. But we'll get into that on a later episode. It's pretty interesting. I like to tell that story about the 04-05 WPT Aruba tournament and how if the 6 don't come on the river, I end up with probably $800,000 apiece. I take 50 and put it for bills, and then I give the rest to Howard, where I get like 2 or 3%, which would have been about $12 million. This is before all the fucking shit happened, but just to give you an idea how one card changes so many people's lives. And why would I ever take the $200,000 and take 1% of full tilt when I could put it in a sports betting account and blow it, which is what I did. But that's what I was known for in my life. So that was the '04 WPT Aruba. There was an invitation-only tournament where I got second to Tony G. That was another chance of winning a title, but I trapped Tony G with 2 kings. Every time I limped, he'd move in. I was purposely doing it just to set him up. So I limp with 2 kings. He moved in. I snap called. He has 10-8. The flop came 10-8, and I finished second in that World Poker Tour event. So, as you see, I was a little bit pretty snake bit in these WPTs, but I kept, chugging along. I then go fast forward to the 07-08 WPT, which I finished second to Kevin Saul for $671,000. Now, this tournament was interesting because I always prided myself on playing real good in the main event at the World Series, and I played so bad. It was only the second time I got knocked out of the World Series main event. I think I talked about that on my last podcast about the World Series. As a matter of fact, I know I did. So I decided I was going to punish myself after 6 weeks of grinding by playing the Bellagio Cup across the street. I said I'm going to put my head down, put everything I got into this tournament. On I think it was day 3, I was super short. I think it was Oppenheim opened for like pretty big, and he moved all in. I flat call the all in, and the guy behind picked up 2 queens, and he moved all in. I ended up getting a big triple up, which got me some chips. I got to about $1 million, and then with about 13 players left, guy raised. I re-raised small with aces. He had ace king, and he moved in. I called, or actually called my re-raise, and I knew he had ace king, and the flop came king 8 deuce, and I bet small. He raised, I moved all in, he called, and I doubled up huge, which gave me a big stack going to the final table. I ended up head up against Kevin Saul. Kevin had led the tournament from wire to wire, like all 5 days. But I was giving him the ability, making him think he could just raise every pot and run me over. So I was letting him run me over. I'd fold about 10 in a row, and then he'd raise, I'd re-raise, he'd call, I'd move in, he'd fold. And to make the long story short, he won about 85% of the chips, of the pots, but I was like dead even in chips from when we started. Now he started with about a 2-to-1 chip lead on me, or 3-to-1. Maybe it was even 4-to-1. So he raised. This is the hand that he won the tournament on. I started the hand with like 2.3 million, and I think he started the hand with like 8 million. If I won the hand, we were going to be dead even in chips. So he raised, I flatted with 7-8 of clubs. The flop came, I think we were playing 40,000 limit at the time. The flop came 5-6 of clubs. I checked, he bet. I raised, he moved all in. I called, and I'll never forget, he looks up and he goes, kisses his cards, and he says, "I wish my friend was here to see me win this." And I looked him right in the eye and I said, "Hey, Kevin, Do you really think that I just put 2.3 million chips in and you have the best hand? And now all of a sudden he kind of like went into a panic mode because he had already tabled his 2 queens. I turned over 7-8 of clubs where I'm the favorite. And now all of a sudden his demeanor changes. And of course I brick off. He wins the tournament. And I am a runner-up again at the WPT. But I'll never forget when he was so excited when he 4-betted all in with queens, like tabled those queens like I was some fucking sucker that just like hadn't put a chip in the fucking pot head up for an hour, and now I put all my money in and he thinks like 2 queens were the best hand. But anyways, that was that tournament. That was pretty disappointing, but you know, I was pretty proud of myself because I punished myself for playing bad in the main event and really played 5 great days of poker. I would probably say to this day that was the best World Poker Tour event I ever played. Even when I got short, I played the short stack great. I gave myself a chance to win. I think it really was the best World Poker Tour event I ever played. But I had a purpose because I fucked up in the World Series main event. And when I play with a purpose, I'm very tough to beat. In the 04 World Series, I played with a purpose, knowing I was going to jail. That's why it hurt so bad when Raymer hit that diamond. Same with the Aruba tournament, where I played with a purpose. It sounds crazy, but there's a big difference between like playing a World Poker Tour event, you know, and just saying, okay, let's go play the WPT Borgata or the WPT Aruba, whatever, and just playing, or actually going there and telling yourself, I'm playing with a purpose. That's a whole different thing. I wish I could literally, whenever I sign up for a World Poker Tour event, I could put my head down and say, I gotta win. I'm playing with a purpose. Because when you truly have that deep focus and you're playing for something, it brings you to a whole new level, which kind of was that tournament. I kind of fast forward. Now, in 07, 08, that tournament was like the first like WPT I started playing really tight, as people don't really realize. From 1999 through 2005, I was the most aggressive player in poker. I mean, you just ask anybody. I was relentless. And then when Card Runners taught everybody bet sizing in 06, and all of a sudden you couldn't run over people anymore because I've told this story before, how I used to know what people had by the way they put their chips in and how they sized their bets. So once that was gone, I knew I had to start playing tight. And it took everybody a couple years to realize that I'm not Crazy Mike anymore, I'm Tight Mike. And I made 4 WPT final tables in the next, in 07, 08, and 09.
The Mouthpiece.
Now it's my favorite part of the show where we take your phone calls here on the Mouthpiece. Welcome to the Mouthpiece. This is Mike.
Oh, what's up, Mike? How you doing, man?
Good, man. Who's this?
This is Tweezer Re-Raise off Twitter. I just read your tweet that you're accepting calls, so I wanted to give you a call.
Yeah, what's going on, man?
Well, first, let me say one thing. I've read your book, Check Raising the Devil, twice, and it'll probably be a third time. That book is probably one of the most interesting reads. I couldn't set that book down for a second.
Sure.
One of the reasons I was drawn to online originally was simply I felt the more, and obviously looking back on this, I think we can both laugh, but looking back on it, I thought it was more just better financially due to just the ease of being able to play tournaments at a lower price.
Right.
And through this is, I guess my question is, as a person that is trying to get more into live poker, do you feel there are any more advantageous situations in the realm for just a more recreational player looking to break in? Is there any certain games or things you'd recommend?
There's so many tournaments everywhere now, the small buy-ins, $100 buy-ins, $150 buy-ins. The thing about like when online tournaments is, because you get so many hands and the levels go up like every, I think, 15 or 20 minutes. So you had to do a lot of 3-betting and 4-betting with, kind of dark, like and hoping they fold. And now, and when you watch live people, it took a while for the online people to adjust, knowing that you can't just be 3-betting and 4-betting just because because people could see if you're weak or not in a live setting. And they've made those adjustments now. But I say it all the time, online poker was not meant to play for high stakes. It was meant for people like you that, like whether you're in the middle of the country or places where they don't have a poker room and you just want to play cheap tournaments or cheap poker for recreational. And it ended up turning into, this people playing for these crazy high limits online, which I never was that for anyways. So I understand what you're talking about, and it kind of sucks for you. And I hope that online does come back for you, and you'll be able to play a lot more. So. Well,
thank you so much, Mike. I appreciate it, and best of luck this summer, man. I appreciate that.
You
taking
got it,
that call.
And enjoy. You've listened to my podcast, I hope, and I hope you enjoy them. And take care. Thanks for calling, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you so much. Take care.
Take care. Bye. Welcome to the Mouthpiece. This is Mike.
Yes, Mike, I have a question. Approximately how much cocaine have you snorted in your entire life?
That's, I really haven't snorted that much cocaine. I mean, I did a lot of ecstasy pills.
This is not Mike Mattis.
I did a lot of ecstasy pills, but cocaine, let's see. I will say I've probably snorted, I'll be honest, maybe 25 8-balls, 30.
That's not much at all.
No, but I did a lot. I did a lot of ecstasy tabs.
This is not Mike Mattis stuff.
A lot.
Yes, it is.
A lot.
How do you know Brandon Reimer?
Yeah, no,
how do I know who?
Brandon Reimer?
I don't know him. Is that who just called me? Hello. Brandon. Brandon. You got another question for me? That was funny. Welcome to the Mouthpiece. This is Mike.
What's up, Mike? It's Keith.
Keith, what's going on, man? Where are you from?
I'm actually from New Jersey, but I live here in Las Vegas.
Oh, cool. That's awesome. What's going on?
No, so I actually had 2 questions for you.
Sure.
I do have your book. I got your book a while ago and read that about 2 years ago.
Okay.
You
like it?
Raising the Devil. Yeah, it was really good, actually.
Cool.
So I had two questions, I guess. One from the book and then one other question.
Okay.
So when you had gotten locked up and you went to jail, you had gotten set up.
Mm-hmm.
Did you play poker when you were in jail?
I played a game called Casino. I don't know if you know what that is. And we played spades also. And we played for commissary money. And I took everybody's commissary every week. And I literally, whatever I beat them out of in commissary, I gave to all the nice African-American friends I had and all the whoever my close bunkmates were. And I, you know, they didn't really have much. So they loved me. I always gave them all the commissary that I won playing cards. And I would get like $90 in commissary twice a week, and I would always share it with them. So when I was in jail, like if anybody even got close to me, they would fucking get the shit kicked out of them. So I was really loved when I was in jail. The people were like, one guy fucked with me, and this big guy this guy was like 350, 6'4". He beat the shit out of this guy just for like talking shit to me, and he ended up going to the hole. Nobody fuck with me. I mean, they love me. Plus I was a celebrity and shit. So
that's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
The second question I had was, how do you feel about like the new style and approach to poker using like solvers, and obviously like all the math and advanced concepts have been expanded on, like Phil Gordon stuff is obviously like that's been expanded on now. Guys like Fedor and Haxton pretty much have the game figured out or solved.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about that approach to poker compared to the old school style of poker?
Well, the truth of the matter is that's like a couple people, and they mostly play high rollers. So it really doesn't really affect anything as far as the regular tournaments and stuff, because you're dealing with mostly, regular poker players, amateurs, I played the LAPC a month ago. The levels were hour first day, then 90 minutes second day, then 2 hours day 3 and 4. And I was playing so deep, and I felt I was the best player at the table, and I played with two people I thought were as good as me or better, and I hadn't played a no limit tournament in 2 years. And I don't play any math. I play basic math, but I play I play by feel, whether I feel they got me beat or they don't have me beat. And math kind of goes out the window when you're deep in a poker tournament. It's if you make a call and you're wrong, even when the math tells you to make the call, let's just say the math is 5% in your favor, or even 6% in your favor, or 7%. You make the call and you end up, you don't get there, you're crippled and the tournament's over. So I'm a believer. Me and Phil Helmy kind of play the same style. We're a believer that try and play risk-free poker as much as you can. Use your image to maneuver your way through the minefields, and try and pick up a lot of small pots and wait till you have it to get somebody. Where a lot of the new people, they just play a lot of more hands, and they play the math, and then they call because the math tells them they have to call, and then whatever, But I just believe in tournament poker that the math is not as important as it is in cash game. Like, I always play the math in cash games because you could rebuy. And so whenever you have 5, 4, 6%, the best of it, 4% even, you always take the percentage of the best of it because you could rebuy. So that's just my opinion. I've been ridiculed by Daniel on other podcasts about how I don't know basic math on poker, which is a joke because he's trying to tell me, well, how many outs does this guy have? And this blocks this, and this blocks this. I'm like, buddy, this ain't PLO, man. I don't give a fuck what blocks what. Guy raises you have to guess, what does he have? You know what I'm saying? You should be able to figure it out. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I've always been able to figure it out. And when I'm wrong, I just go broke. It's all good. The one guy said to me at the end of day one of the Win tournament, he's like, how in the hell do you have 87,000 chips? I've never even seen you play a pot. And I was just like, well, I've won a couple pots here and there. And the bottom line is I get talking with them. I chit chat with them. I make them happy, and I become friendly with them. And little by little, I'm stealing little pots, picking up lots of little pots. Why I'm talking to them. And when you're playing well when the guy says that, how do you have 87,000 chips? I haven't even seen you win a pot. Well, when you're playing good and your chip stack is going up, little by little, and you're not risking any chips, that's when you know you're playing well. And that's how I
do you still get the same enjoyment out of playing poker, considering everything that you've been through, and WSOPs and WPTs and traveling and playing? Do you still get the same enjoyment?
Well, I don't really travel the tournament circuit. I go to LA for the LAPC because it's a freeze out, and I'm really against re-entry tournaments. I think it is the absolute death of poker, so I go to that one. I go to the Bay 101 because Shooting Star, because they have 300 people starting with 225 that it's satellited in, plus 30 shooting stars. And by the time all the other players get in, the people that satellited in are probably going to punt off their stacks. So it's a great tournament for me. And that's it. And I play the World Series, and that's it. And during the World Series, I play one shootout usually, and the main event, and the rest are all mixed games. So I'm one of the best mixed games player in the world, and I love playing mixed game tournaments, big 10K mixed games. So that's what I do at the World Series. I usually play 15 to 20 tournaments, and that's what I do all year.
Yep. So.
Well,
cool, man. Thank you for taking my call. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you calling in, and take care.
You, Mike.
You got it. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
The Mouthpiece.
If you'd like to take part in our phone call segment, you can give us a call at 702-329-0480. And if you're a snowflake or a pussy and you don't want to talk to me, you can email me at mouthpiecepodcast@gmail.com. Also, follow me at the Mouth Matiso on Twitter for times that our call-in segment will be live. Welcome to the Mouthpiece. And on the other line, we have our the one and only original poker ambassador, Mr. Mike Sexton. What's going on, my man?
Hey, thanks, Mike. Glad to be on the show.
And how you been, man?
Yeah, I've been pretty good. Just got back from Rio a few days ago, where Party Poker had a Millions event down there, and I'd never been down to South America or Brazil or Rio before, so that was unique, but things are good.
Yeah, I was down there in 2010. It was a lot of fun. I bet it was good. I'm glad it all went well for you. But we're gonna try and take our viewers, the people that are listening, back to I'll say, was it 1998, 99? When was the original Tournament of Champions that you created?
The first one was 1999.
1999. So I want everybody to understand the vision that Mike Sexton had for poker before anybody else. And you want to explain to everybody what your vision was when you started that first Tournament of Champions?
Yeah, well, I started as a professional poker player in 1977, and had been playing for 15, 20 years. And I always had a dream to put on an event called the Tournament of Champions of Poker, because I wanted to pattern it after the Tournament of Champions of Golf, where you had to win a golf tournament during a calendar year to get to play in the Tournament of Champions. I thought that was so cool that golf did that, and I wanted to do it for poker. So I had this vision and this dream of putting it together, but I wanted the finals to be multi-games. I didn't want it just to be no limit hold'em like every other championship was. This was going to be the ultimate test of poker, multiple games against all champions to determine the ultimate champion. And that was my dream. And, I put it together and I had it planned, and then I started going around the casinos, and I realized it was tougher to put on than I thought. And because they're not used to working with an outside person like that, where the reputation's at stake, and if something happens to it or I skip out with the money or something,
right?
The reputation is damaged, saying they were going to hold it, kind of thing. So I went to all the big casinos, and I started with Lyle Berman's Stratosphere first, and then went to Bobby Baldwin, and he loved it, but he didn't do it. And then I went to the Commerce Casino. I went to all the biggies, and they all loved the idea, loved the concept, but none of them would do it.
Would we end up having it at the Gold Coast? I'm trying to remember.
It was at the Orleans.
The Orleans, yeah,
and
I knew it was one of the coasts.
At that particular time, if you remember, the Orleans held the largest event in terms of number of players of any tournament in the country at that time.
I do.
They had 1,000 players in some of their tournaments. So at the end of their summer festival, they agreed to tack on the Tournament of Champions, and we put it on there at the Orleans, and I held it there for 3 years. And truthfully, and I'm not saying it just because I put it on, you played in it.
Yeah.
And you just ask anybody that played in that tournament, and I believe, most of them would say that was the coolest tournament ever.
It was.
We marched people in like the Olympic Games,
yep.
Country flags. We had music. I had a side ballroom next to the tournament area where we had posters and banners of all the great players in the casinos that are participating. And I had a band and music every night, dinner, and it was just a real festival. And
it was amazing.
It was just truly a fantastic event that I was so proud of. And I had about twice as many players with the first year we had it in my event as they had in the main event of the World Series of Poker. So it was really a huge event that first year. and second year 2 and third year. But sadly, I never made money with the tournament. I lost money every year, but it obviously led me to good things because I got the job with Party Poker because of that, as well as the World Poker Tour. So for me personally, it worked out good, but it still breaks my heart that the Tournament of Champions sort of went away, because I truly believe it was the greatest event in poker.
I agree, and I've been saying it for years now that the World Series of Poker should bring back the Tournament of Champions in a different type of way, where everybody that wins a bracelet during that year, we play the game that they won in a dealer's choice mix. And then they play, like if there's 70 bracelet winners, 70 people play, well, probably be about 40, like 20 different games, because most of it is no limit hold'em. But then everybody gets a chance to play their best game, and the best that plays all the games would
that's
get
an idea. Now, as you know, my last Tournament of Champions event, I did it for 3 years, was in 2001. And in 2005, the World Series of Poker did have a Tournament of Champions.
Yeah.
And they had come to me and asked me if it was okay if they used that name and all. And I thought that was nice of them to do. And I said, sure. And it turns out you won that event for $1 million.
Yep.
And then in 2006, Party Poker sponsored the event. They put up $2 million for the tournament. And the winner got $1 million, and the other $1 million was chopped up with the other players. And it came down to the three of us. It came down to me and you and Daniel Negreanu, the defending champion, and me and Daniel Negreanu, the final three. And I was fortunate enough to come out on top. And so I won that Tournament of Champions and got $1 million for that. That was pretty cool. And
let's talk about that for a minute, because I want to talk about that event, that the call you made against me that propelled you to win that event, which a lot of people out there don't really know. But if you go and look back at the video of the 2006 Tournament of Champions, like I was like the defending champion, I was looking to be the first person to win $1 million and defend $1 million tournament in back-to-back years. And it was a hand where I limped the King 4 of hearts on the button, and then I flopped the flush draw. I got a little tricky with it, and you called me with bottom pair, and the rest is history. Well, let's take you. Do you remember that hand?
People can go to YouTube. We've got a lot of hits on that hand, watching that hand. And honestly, truthfully, I mean, because Daniel said, oh, he got you, and you said, okay, and you started bowing down. And anyway, but in my opinion, honestly, it didn't seem like that tough a call to make the way the hand was played.
Yeah.
And I say that because the flop come Queen 9-3, and Daniel checked first, and I checked second, and you checked on the button. And the flop wasn't raised pre-flop.
Right.
And now an ace comes on the turn. And again, it goes check to you, and now you bet 40,000 or 60,000, I forget, and I called it. And then on the turn, a jack comes off.
On the river, you mean.
And now I checked, and now you bet again, and I paid you off with 2 threes, because in my mind, I didn't put you on queens or nines, or you'd bet the flop.
Right.
And I didn't put you on an ace. You didn't raise pre-flop.
Right.
So in my mind, you either made a straight or you made nothing. So I thought you would check it down with jacks if you'd have made a pair of jacks on the end. So I thought you had a straight or nothing, and I called you with the 2 threes, and I won the pot with it. But everywhere I go, people just rave about that hand, Mike. You can't even imagine. They all talk about that hand, and truthfully, honestly, it just didn't seem like that tough a call to me at that particular time, the way the hand was played.
I agree. I
I
should have bet the flop, but I got a little tricky because I wanted, I don't know what I wanted to do, really. My plan was to check it, and then somebody bet the turn, and then I was going to raise it, and I had all these plans, and then when they checked it to me again, I was just like, well, now I'm going to bet this thing, and
I didn't put you on an ace because you didn't raise pre-flop 3.
Right.
I didn't think you had.
But I told
you there.
I told them.
You could have made a straight. You could have had king 10 in my mind, or you could have had 10-8 suited or something like that. I mean, I easily thought you could have had that, but I thought it was worth calling you with 2 threes, and it turns out it was. And it just the way you reacted and Daniel reacted, that's what made that hand so historical on YouTube. So For all your listeners, I suggest go watch it. It is fun hand to watch.
It is. And I told people after I went broke and you were head up against Daniel, I told everybody that Mike Sexton's going to win. You were really, really focused. You were locked in. Daniel was a little too splashy, and I just felt that you were just going to win. And I told everybody, and you ended up winning. And I think...
Yeah, it took me 7 hours. We played 7 hours
right.
heads up. So
I think Daniel wore down a little bit.
It was a really tough battle. And fortunately, it just came out my way.
Yeah, and I was real happy to see that for you to win that. And if
it was really good, and because you have to qualify where you're either a world champion or you make the final table the year before, or you win all these circuit events or something to even get qualified to get in this tournament.
Right.
But because Party Poker sponsored the event, I was their ambassador, so they got one person they could put in the event, and they put me in, obviously. Right. And before the tournament started, I said I'm donating half of whatever I win to charity. So fortunately, $500,000 I could donate to 5 different charities. Gave $100,000 apiece.
That's great.
To like Wounded Warriors and Special Olympics and the Paralyzed Veterans of America and all. So it was really fun for everybody, and it's truly a great memory for me.
Yeah. Now, I haven't really checked on this, but I'm pretty sure it's a fact, though. So World Series this year, they're having they're kind of bringing back some form of the Tournament of Champions. If you're a bracelet winner or you win a bracelet this year, they have, I think it's like an $1,100 buy-in for bracelet winners or whoever wins the tournament this year, if I'm not mistaken. Have you heard about that? Or
no, I don't.
Yeah,
I'm not. I'm not like a Daniel. These guys are planning their World Series out 6 months in advance, and
yeah,
say they're going to win 15 or cash 15 times and all that.
Well, you know what? If I really like. I actually brought it up to Daniel because I thought it was an actual bet, and so I really felt he had the best of it. But he said no. So he said he offered it to somebody, and the person turned it down. And I thought, that he would have the best of it because it's so easy to min cash now in these $1,000 buy-ins.
Mike, as you know, if you're making bets just to cash, you're going to play a lot different than you're playing to win the tournament.
You ain't lying.
And I do think that, if he had a big $5 million bet or something like that, that he's going to play very differently when it comes near the bubble to get in the money and not take chances and try to build up his chips. And you're going to try to win that bet first. So,
absolutely.
With all the events there are this year, people do it. I was in shock for years. I was one of the top 10 in cashes at the World Series of Poker. I think now I've dropped down to about 25th because there's so many events now, and I don't play like all these young guys.
Right.
But, I went to the stat book and looked up some of the World Series caches. I'm even going to do an article about it.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a guy named Roland Israelashvili or something.
Yeah, Roland is
last year.
Yeah, he yeah.
He's had 45 caches in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
At the World Series of Poker. Now that's incredible to me. And his highest finish ever was 9th, but he's just a casher. And so he had 13 caches in 2017 and 13 caches in 2016. Now he's a jeweler from New York City.
Yeah.
So, that shows you that it can be done. And if you play a lot of events, and I agree with both you and Daniel when you say it's easier to cash in the lower buy-in tournaments because some of them are rebuys, number one. Some of them you can just late reg.
Well, yeah, he just has to late reg.
The deadline, and I swear to you, if you double up one time, you're in the money.
That's it. Late, and that's another thing where I have a problem with. But that's if somebody was to make that bet, I was telling Daniel in a text is like all he has to do is late reg, and if he wins the first hand, he cashes, and if he doesn't, he goes to the next $1,000 buy-in, and it would have been a stupid bet of whoever would have made that bet with him, but he said he ended up not making that bet. The guy backed out.
If I knew he wasn't going to bet anybody else,
right?
I'd bet him 10,000 so that he wouldn't cash 15 times.
Yeah, 10,000. Yeah,
I bet you don't. Where it's not going to affect his play, and he's going to try to win. He might get knocked out on the bubble and all that, but if he's betting a lot of people, I wouldn't want to bet him.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about all the time you spent at the World Poker Tour and what your effect of you being involved had on the broadcast, and tell all our viewers why you decided to leave the World Poker Tour, and let's just hear from you on this.
Well, I love the World Poker Tour from day one. Even before it was started, I helped get it going with Steve Lipscomb, who created it, and I've been the broadcaster from day one for the first 15 years of the World Poker Tour, and I loved every minute of it, and I still love the World Poker Tour, and I still believe it was the very best job in poker. There is not a better job than a commentator on the World Poker Tour, in my opinion.
I agree.
And I was very blessed to work with Vince Van Patten all those years because we got along so well, and we're alike in so many ways, and he's just such a good friend, and he helped me a lot early when we started the show out, and so I was just blessed in a lot of ways, A, to get the job, and B, to work with Vince, and C, to last that long, and
right.
So it was good. So at the end of 15 years, at that particular time, Party Poker Live was starting up, where they were starting the Millions Tour, and they were going to do their own tour, and some of the events conflicted date-wise with the World Poker Tour, et cetera, et cetera. And I was over in England, and Rob Young, the guy that created the Party Poker Live Tour, had me sit down with the CEO of Party Poker at that time,
right,
which was Tom, and so the three of us sat down, and basically it was a 5-minute meeting, honestly. I mean, it didn't take any longer than that.
Wow.
And they just made me a deal I couldn't refuse.
But it was hard for you to leave the World Poker Tour, though, right?
So that they just offered me more money in a 4-year contract. With at the end of the 4-year contract, I get a nice bonus where I can retire on it. So, it was just something that the World Poker Tour wasn't going to be able to match.
Right.
So I called Adam Pliska that night, the CEO, and I said, Adam, I won't be back for season 16 on the World Poker Tour. I've just been offered something I just can't turn down personally, and for my family and all. And he said, Mike, he said, I appreciate the call. He said, we hate to lose you. He said, but I'm so happy for you personally. And, then of course, he did say, well, can you just do the TV shows? Can you just do this or that? But he couldn't have been nicer. It's impossible the World Poker Tour could have treated me better when I parted company with them. And I left them pretty abruptly, honestly. And, I mean, they had a few months, but I'm just saying it's not like I gave them a year's lead time,
right,
to find somebody else. And they just promoted Tony right up to my spot. So it worked out for them. But that's how it came down. Honestly, it was just, and I love Party Poker. That was my baby because I helped start it.
Right.
And I've been with them all the time. And then now I'm so happy to see them rebounding. And business has increased like 50% each of the last couple of years. And I'm very happy about that. The Party Poker Live Tour, it just skyrocketed to the number one tour in terms of guarantees and prize pools. And it's been great to see that. And honestly, I'm just flattered to be a part of it. I love the vision of Party Poker now. But I will always have a special place in my heart for the World Poker Tour. I still love them. I went to the awards banquet the other night, the Global Awards, and I was so happy to see Angelica Hale from the World Poker Tour win the Industry Person of the Year. And I sat at their table, and it was very special. And I was still flattered that they still accept me in their group, and they still consider me family and say I'll always be part of it. And I feel that way about them. But, I love Party Poker as well. So I've just been very lucky that, honestly, I've had the two best jobs in poker. And, I've just been fortunate.
So let's just go out on the limb here. So you're running what do they call you? The head ambassador for Party Poker now? What's your title?
Yeah, that's what I am essentially. I mean, they call me what do they call me? It's the big title of
whatever.
The chairman. I'm the chairman of Party Poker.
Okay, chairman of Party Poker. I like that. So
correct.
We're going to get
I'm not on the board of directors and make those kind of decisions. It's just a name and title only, honestly. But
it's a good title.
The chairman, yes.
It makes you seem like a higher than you
are.
Yeah,
it's a nice title. I love the title.
So we'll call you Chairman Mike from now on, and
there you go.
And we'll go with that.
Okay,
so we're going to say Party Poker is going to blow up because Mike Sexton is going to work his ass off to make it happen. Mike's going to make a nice little bonus. Is Mike Sexton going to go back and start betting sports and fuck himself like Mike Madison did?
No, I'll tell you, I'm not, Mike. Honestly, I'm not saying I've quit completely, but I don't bet over a dime anymore on anything. When I was betting 10, 20, 50,000 a game, crazy stuff.
Hey, welcome to the club.
But once you get older now, and I'm over 70 now, so,
Are you really?
I know that how lucky I was to get older money and how lucky I'm going to be to have one more chance to get enough to retire on and live a nice life. So I'm not going to screw it up this time. I can promise you that.
That's what I want to hear.
Truthfully, I'm not. And plus, I have a son now that's 10, and I spend all my time with him now. I don't ever go down and play poker anymore. I live on my salary. I live on my retirement money. I still love playing the tournaments, and I love playing the World Series, and I'll do that. But I'm not a grinder anymore like I did for 25 years, and I'm very fortunate that I'm in a position I don't have to do that. Every once in a while I might play just for fun, but I literally don't go down to the strip once, twice a year, honestly, anymore.
That's kind of my goal also, it's just, I screwed up. I lost, God, not as much as you, but I lost a lot of money betting sports. And, I got injured. I've been sick. So it's been real tough on me. But, I keep telling myself, I'm going to get myself, I have respect for money again. In other words, there's no chance I could ever bet sports again, like 5 or 10, 20, 30,000, 50,000 a game ever again. Like I bet 500 on this national championship game. I ain't made a bet and I couldn't tell you how long, and I got fortunate to win, but it was I just thought it was their year. But I'm not going to go jump, and I got credit. I could probably bet 5 or 10,000 if I wanted to on the game, but it's just never going to happen again.
When I tell you, when you get away from it, like you don't start betting a lot again. You don't. It's not doesn't interest you if you're not watching it.
Right.
Really, in my case anyway. I used to like to just watch every game on every channel, but but when you're not betting and you're not watching, you don't really care that you're not betting.
Right. And the thing is, I if you don't, and you'll probably agree with me. If you don't go looking for a bet, it's a lot easier to find a winner than if you're looking to bet a game to be in action. Would you agree with that? Like, it seems like if I never look to make a bet, but I'm home and I want to bet, this is the first bet I made and I couldn't tell you how long, but if, let's just say you want to make a bet on a game of football, I mean, you just can't be betting thousands and then chasing them for thousands like we used to do. I mean, that's just could never happen again.
You can't beat it, and
I know you can't beat it. That I know.
Year in and year out, and every year before the football season would start, I'd always say, I wish I could just get juiced out for the year. I'd have so much fun betting all these games if I just lost the juice, which would somehow be a pretty good amount, but it's pale in comparison to what I would lose normally.
I used to tell the people all the time, they would always, I'm sure I know you probably got $1.05. We both got $1.05 because we never won, but they could give us plus $1.05, and I don't think we could have ever won.
I still wouldn't win.
Me neither. Me neither. They used to say I was the worst in history.
The only reason I talk about it, I'm not proud of it, obviously.
I'm not either.
All that much, but I just hope people that listen to people who have been down that road like me and you will take a step back, and if they're starting to bet too much or do some other things, other bad habits, a little bit too much, that they'll step back and maybe take a different path.
Well, that's
because you don't have to go broke if you're smart. You've made a lot of money and you make $1 million score and you do some smart things. But believe me, if you're gambling in the pit, if you're doing drugs, if you're drinking too much, if you're betting sports, if you're doing all that kind of stuff, I don't care how much money you have, you can go broke. Right,
and that's why I brought it up, because I want people out there to know that are listening to the show, younger kids that think that are. Well, they probably not think they're good, that they are good. And then the next thing you know, they're going to the strip bars, just betting sports, drinking, going to the pit. I just don't want to see people go down the road. I want people to hear from people like me and you that have been down that road, that have that have just made a lot of mistakes. And unfortunately, it took later in our lifetime to realize the mistakes we made, and hopefully.
Yeah, no, I credit the young guys way more than the older generation of players, because most of the older players, as you know, were gamblers at heart.
Oh, yeah.
They bet on everything, whether it be the horses, the pit, sports, golf course. But nowadays players, they don't do that. Most of them are pretty smart about it. I think some of them drink a little bit too much. That's probably the biggest problem that I see. But I don't see them wandering into the pit like most of us did back in the old days.
Yeah, that's the only thing I never did was go into the pit. I just did the.
Yeah, I was never a big pit player either, but I did do some, but not like many. But as you know, back in the early days of the World Series of Poker, they only had the World Series of Poker because they invited gamblers to come out there.
Right.
And they'd play a lot more in the pit. So that's how the World Series was created. It wasn't their love of poker.
Right.
It was because it was an old gamblers' reunion, basically, is what it was. And it worked out well for Binions in the World Series. And obviously, all of us today that are in the poker world need to credit not only Jack Benny and the Binions, but all those guys that put their 10,000 up back in those days to play a poker tournament against all pretty tough players. So, I think that young players need to credit older generations of players.
I say this all the time. It's one of my biggest pet peeves is when people say bad things about whether it's me or Phil or whoever, Ivy or whoever back in the days. They don't, and I came after your generation, and people don't realize how hard we worked, even at the beginning of the World Poker Tour, when there was, like you were showing me a picture the other day of the first Party Poker $1 million, or the Party Poker that we did the cruise on, and then I think that was like we did the World Poker Tour was the first event was like right after that, and there was like 25 of us, then 50 of us, then 75, and people don't realize that we were like all playing all the good players, trying to build the tour up, trying to build poker to where it is today, where I credit your vision and Phil Helmuth's vision, but we all worked so hard. And I just wish, and me and Phil talked about it a lot, and I've brought it up a lot, I just wish the younger generation would sometimes walk up and say thank you to you, to me, to Phil, to realize, instead of knocking people and saying, oh, Phil Helmuth can't play a lick anymore. Meanwhile, he's still winning bracelets. Meanwhile, I go to the World Series and I'm still crushing it. But they just want to be haters and knock people, and I just don't think it's right. I just think in every, and you could say poker's a sport. You don't have to say it's a sport, but whether you think it is or not, you got to respect the generations that came before you, that put in the work to give these people the ability to make a living. Because there wouldn't be if it wasn't for you, for Phil, for Daniel, me, Doyle, and you can name, so many more.
Yeah, I mean, even though we've been around a long time, you look at the guys that came ahead of us, they used to play the road down in Texas,
right,
where they're going to get hijacked and robbed and cheated.
Right.
And now these guys get to play in lavish casinos for multi-millions of dollars all the time in these tournaments now, and it just wouldn't have happened had it not progressed with those guys that played in the 70s, and then those of us that came up in the 80s and the 90s as well,
right,
and then television kicking in the 2000s. So, it's definitely it was step by step that it took place, but it took all those steps to make poker what it is today, for sure.
Absolutely. Now, you've because you're a commentator on the World Poker Tour, you get to really get a vision of old school players against new school players, and I have this ongoing feud with a lot of people when I get on their case, because they always say, well, this ace blocks this and this 10 blocks this, so that makes less chance that I'm like, you either look the guy in the face and he has you beat, or he doesn't. They're like making this whole thing about block this and block that. I go, blockers don't work in PLO. How the fuck are they going to work in Hold'em? But they say it over and over. And Daniel was on some podcast the other day saying that I don't know basic math in No Limit Hold'em, and I'm like, no, because I'm not going to try and figure out if he has a 10 because I had a 10 and this guy threw away a queen and this whatever. So
hey, look, I respect those guys that do the GTO and do
right,
all the stuff and put in all the work, and
I do too.
Nobody has more respect than me. Anybody that can play tournament poker and make a living today, I know how tough it is, so I salute all of them. But
I agree.
But I know this, that I would say 70 to 80% of the time when you play a tournament, no limit hold'em, you either go out on a race normally. That's what happens most all the time.
Right.
To me. The most players, I don't care how great they are, who they are, doesn't matter. They got to win races to win tournaments.
Yeah, and the good players try and get there without playing any races. Like,
I agree.
When I was
I agree.
deep in the WPT and the LAPC a month ago, I never played one race the entire tournament, but it was also really well structured where it was our first day, 90 minutes second day, 2 hours third and fourth. So it was almost like the World Series. So where if you were deep, you didn't have to, I was like starting day 457, big blinds deep, 2 hour levels. You could just be patient and, kind of play a little bit nitty.
No, and as you know, we all know, Phil Hellmuth, he doesn't like to play big pots. He likes a small ball and play small pots.
Me neither.
And you remember in the old days when Hoyt Corkins would raise him all in all the time, and it just drove him crazy.
Right.
Because he didn't want to play the big bets. And, now it's funny, when I was down in Rio, me and Bobby Baldwin and Phil Hellmuth and Rob Young and Ben Lamb
he told me the
and
story.
Isildur, Victor Bloom, Warren Les, we're all sitting around, and we all night we were at the bar one night.
Right.
And everybody was drinking a lot. And the bet came up between Hellmuth and Rob Young.
He told me about
to play a heads-up match.
Right.
And Rob wanted to play it for $1 million. And then Hellmuth agreed to play 5 matches for $100,000 each, heads up and no limit hold'em.
Right.
So they sort of shook on and agreed to it. And then Rob said to me later, "Do you think it'll ever happen?" I said, "No, I don't think it's going to happen because schedule conflicts and time to play them and all this and that will come up with Phil and the structure, blah, blah, blah." And then finally they just cemented it the other day. I saw it on Twitter that they're going to now play, and it's 5 $100,000 heads-up freeze-outs, and it's $100,000 each. So if somebody would scoop, they'd win $500,000. And now it's going to get done. So, but that's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah.
Because they play different styles. Phil's going to want to play small ball, but Rob is just going to put continuous pressure on it. And
but how
interesting to see how it comes out.
That's what we wanted to talk about. So, okay, I heard about Phil was telling me something about a match. I didn't know the whole details of it, but as well as I do how good Phil reads cards. These people who like to, Phil. Yes, does Phil make a lot of fundamental mistakes a lot of time? Yes, he does. But his reading abilities is second to none, and people don't understand the good things he does. And we're not going to go out and tell everybody what the good things he does, but how good Phil reads cards, right?
Yeah, I agree with that, but I also know Rob Young a little better than you do.
I don't know him at all.
This guy plays the highest stakes cash games in the world.
Oh, wow.
And travels the world to play them with the Triton. Party Poker just partnered up, incidentally, with the Triton Poker Tour and their festivals and the big events. And, they have really big cash games. I mean, really big. It always stops, and Rob's right in the middle of it. And he loves playing deep stack poker because he knows he can put a lot of pressure on guys on the river when they still have a lot of chips left as to whether they can call or not. So I'm telling you, it's not a walk in the park for Hellmuth. Trust me.
Okay, but is it going to be a tournament structure or a cash game structure where the limit stays?
They're starting with 100 big blinds. Blinds start out at 500, 1,000, and they raised them. Originally, it was set for 50 minutes, but Rob told me the other day they'd shorten that. So I don't know if it's 40 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever it is, but it's been shortened.
If it's a tournament format,
50 minutes playing heads up is an eternity, believe me.
Oh, believe me, I know. I mean, just when we used to do NBC Head Up, I think there were 20 minutes, and that was an eternity, or 30 minutes, whatever it was.
Yeah.
So
playing heads up, obviously, you get out so many more hands, so you don't need as long a structure as you do during the regular tournament with a ring game.
Right, and I think if they lowered the structure, like they bring it to 30 minutes, I think, and they keep raising it, that's going to favor Phil. But if it's like you said, 45 or 50 minutes, that's an eternity in head up, and I think you're probably right. And I've never seen the other guy play. I just know that if it's a tournament structure where the blinds are going up and he's playing against a guy who plays cash games all the time, it's definitely would favor Phil. But if it's 50 minutes, that's like you said, that's an eternity, and I don't
Yeah.
know the other players. So
It's going to be fun, and a rival put the needles in him too if it gets ahead or gets him down a game or so, and you know, it'll be interesting to see how Helmuth handles that. So
yeah, and
it's definitely going to be something fun to watch if and when it comes off, and I'm sure that it will come off because now they've said it again, and it came out on Twitter the other day. So I can't see it not happening. So we'll see what happens.
it's going to be fun.
But it's going to be fun.
Anything Phil does is fun.
The Mouthpiece.
Thanks for listening to part 1 of episode 3 of The Mouthpiece. Tune in tomorrow for part 2, episode 3.
The Mouthpiece.